February 6th, 2:15 p.m. The first matter,
Keep going.
what? Do you want me to start again, boss?
Throw the date on.
All right. Today's date or just a date? Okay. We're here for the work session agenda, February 6th, 2024, 2:15 p.m. The first matter is Lita, and you have negative 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I didn't also mention that we also have Community Action Partnership here represented by Kelly Wessels. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Okay. So I am here today with Community Action Partnership. I believe, how many board members are here?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 present.
And the reason we're here in front of you is because as part of, I guess, what we do in legal, we work with the boards, make sure they're in compliance, make sure their bylaws look good. And at that point in time, Community Action Partnership was up for reappointment, but when all of us started looking at the appointments, they were a little wonky to say the least. And so Ms. Duncan Malone and I were concerned they were out of compliance. And that's no one's fault necessarily. Who knows how? We don't have a good history of that, and we aren't really able to trace that. But in any event, we all worked together. It was a little difficult at first, but we made it through to ensure that every board member is statutorily in compliance with all of CAP's federal grants. And we just wanted to let you all know that's why they're coming here a little bit later than in January, or I guess the end of December. And I believe Michelle has the letters that the chair signs. So we've double and triple checked everything. And I don't know if Ms. Wessels has anything.
Well, I think that this is just a first step. We wanted to make sure that we got in alignment, which has been very helpful. We've worked really well with legal, and we have some activities that we're going to pursue after this as far as bylaw review, because there's some things in that. Having come here in 22, there were things that needed to be rebuilt. There was discussion that needed to occur, and this is just part of that progression because finally legal has the ability to address those things with some capacity.
That's all we have.
Thank you both. Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Wessels or for council? I'd like to thank you, Kelly, and you too, Lita, but you have been working a lot on some of this governance and structural stuff for CAP, and it's I was the board liaison for my first 9 months on the commission, and it's kind of an odd organization in that there are, statutes that apply, there's federal funding that has certain requirements along with it that is an important part of your annual funding. So thanks for trying to get this back on the right path. We appreciate that. And maybe it takes away from some of the time you can spend to your with your constituents. I'm sorry for that, but this long term will really help us out. So thank you.
Yes. May I introduce the individuals that are here
Yeah,
to
please.
you? Because I think it's important to have recognition for the boards that do participate.
That'd be great.
I was recruited and brought into a very engaged board. And that doesn't always happen in my line of work. So I would like to introduce Cliff Gindelis, Gary Shockey, Christy Oster, she's my board chair, Linda Toohey, and Lana Jones. They are a part of our group. I am very proud to represent them and for their support. They've been amazing. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, board members.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rita.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be in touch.
Yep.
The next matter on the agenda is Anna Kinder, Natrona County Health Department, for an update. And I see our owner's rep and our architect. Come on down.
Gentlemen?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for taking time today. We are making significant progress, and so we're here for kind of some next steps. But I wanted to draw a couple things to your attention, that this is actually our 70th year that we'll be celebrating as far as being a public health agency in Natrona and City of Casper. I think behind the letter, there were some points made of why this building is unique and will help serve the citizens of Natrona County more than your typical four walls of a building, taking into consideration those unique factors to really enhance what we're able to do and serve the public. The biggest concern that we have, obviously, is to be underbuilt. I can list off a number of buildings that are in that situation right now, who opened their doors and were immediately underbuilt for what they needed to have. The structure that we have in mind allows us for growth. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but I have big plans of where we're going and the things that I want to see happen. In our mission statement, it talks about preventing disease, promoting health, and protecting the public's health and well-being through service and education. By having this building, we'll be able to do that mission in a much stronger way. Health is just as much of an importance as anything else that we do in life. If we're not healthy, we're not able to do some of the other things successfully. So with that, I wanted to have, as Mr. Chairman said, we have our owner's rep for the new building, who will talk about a couple things, as well as Brendan is here from the architects to answer any questions that you may have. If you have questions about what I listed out in unique features, I'm happy to answer those as well. So.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Great to see all of you. I think my trees are budding at home. I'm a little nervous about this weather. But we just wanted to bring you up to speed on what's transpired over the last couple months with the project. And so I wanted to run through a couple things. As of October of last year, MOA and the rest of their design team had completed schematic design documents, which is the first level of design that really gets the buildings kind of tightened up, starting to look at finishes, selection of building materials, exterior elevations, starting to analyze the building structure itself and the other engineering features around it, including the site. And based on those documents, they had an independent cost estimate done by Cumming, based out of Denver, a nationally known company that's very good. And in the meantime, then we were in the process of bringing the construction manager at risk on board, which we did just recently, and they immediately dove in before the end of the year and began working on an independent cost estimate based on the same set of schematic design documents. We've since had a chance to compare those internally and done a reconciliation between Cumming and Sampson, and we're now sitting at an estimated construction cost for schematic design of $34.5 million. This includes an 8% design contingency, which is utilized as the project moves forward in design to cover unanticipated things that haven't been thought about or looked at in any great detail at this point in the design itself. And once the documents are complete, whatever's left in that contingency then goes back into the project. And then also carrying a 5% construction contingency, which is used during the building of the project to cover unforeseen conditions, items that are brought up and changed throughout construction. And it's a pretty standard number throughout the industry. We certainly don't want to see either one of these numbers touched or modified at this point because they're pretty critical to how the project moves forward. The design team has been working very closely with the health department to work their way through all of these things. We've been looking at potential cost-saving opportunities, but we determined through a lot of discussion that reducing the size of the building or modifying the site to any great amount would limit the health department's future growth and ability to function after they've moved into the building. So we are looking at other areas that we can presume some cost savings, and we'll continue to do that. And we're looking at right now in the range of $500,000 to $2 million. One of the things that we've talked about in a way of saving money is to begin early with a site package, which would include some pretty intensive earthwork. I think, if I remember correctly, Logan from Sampson indicated that we have about 45,000 cubic yards of material that has to be removed from that site just because of the slope and how the building and the site will fit into that area. So there's a fair amount of earthwork that has to happen before we even start utilities. And so we want to start that early so that we can get that work completed in time for foundations and steel erection to begin before the weather turns on us this coming winter. I know it's hard to say this coming winter when we haven't had one yet, but that certainly helps from a pricing standpoint. Number one, we save on winter conditions. And number two, we're going to get out in the bidding field for site contractors well in advance of what they normally would see work coming out for. So we think that's a very good way to go about this, get ahead of the game by about 3 months and look at the potential of being able to save money on top of that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon. If you have anything else you'd like to add.
No, I wanted to talk to Tim. I wanted to ask him a question real quick. Since he brought it up, I wanted to ask him a question.
Commissioner North.
You say that dirt, soil, whatever in this country,
Earthwork.
it's stuff that you need to move because you can't grow anything on a lot of that stuff underground. Is that going to be relocated on site or is that going to be hauled off?
No, it will be removed from the site. We'll use maybe a little bit of it, but not much. And part of that is the site, if you study it a bit, it has a pretty good slope up to the east to Life Steps campus. And we need to cut that hillside back so that we have enough adequate space, not only for the building and the parking around it, but there are some service drives and some other things that are happening that require us to flatten that area out.
Right. I didn't know if you could take that and move it toward the north end where you have a substantial slope and compact it at the same time. And I'm just asking as far as because cost-wise, it's a whole lot more expensive to haul it off-site than it is to relocate it on-site and compact it.
Commissioner, there is some balancing, but the net is still requiring to be hauled off. We are using some of it, but not enough of it.
Okay.
It doesn't perfectly balance the site.
Okay.
Oh,
Mr.
I
Daigle.
didn't know if there was. Sorry, I didn't know if there were any other questions for Tim before. Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. As we met a few months ago and gave the presentation of the schematic design, you now see the result. And we had talked about pricing at the time we were underway. As we discussed, this is the next step of the process, and we're coming back to keep you all abreast of the progress of the project, recognizing that Tim mentioned the design contingency and the construction contingency that are being carried. We feel like we're being conservative in our approach by continuing to carry those, and those will go down in the next round of pricing as more answers to the questions of scope are clarified in the next phase, which is design development for you all.
Mr. Daigle, the site location at 12th and Conwell, you're familiar with the history after substantial review over the course of a long period of time of alternate sites. We had kind of decided on one of two locations. The one actually being what we call the source gas lot, which is across the street from the current health department location, and utilizing that acreage for the construction of a new building. We had gone down that path a ways and had experienced some preference, strong preference on the city of Casper's part to utilize this location at 12th and Conwell, a property owned by the city of Casper for many, many years. My understanding is that utilizing the 12th and Conwell site versus the source gas current location site results in site infrastructure, site improvement costs, I should say, of between $3 to $5 million that we wouldn't have had we utilized the source gas site. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, there are additional costs. Typically, sites like this that are built on for public buildings, such as the YMCA or a lot of the school sites in town, are the more expensive sites to develop because the private, I've mentioned this a long time ago, the private sector would typically have developed that if it made sense financially for them to have a private sector development on it. The retaining wall expense, the stormwater management expense, the overhead power relocation expense, and the leveling of the site all add up. And so those are more expensive costs. You would have on the source gas site, considering either was some remediation done on that site, there would have been costs, but to the degree that we're seeing, it would have been less on that site, in our opinion.
Thank you. Then we have a document, I think that it's a bullet point, kind of some background and then some specific kind of features of the building. I appreciate that. That gives us a better sense of some of the what the nature of the facility is going to look like. We also have a request for proposal for commissioning services in our work session packet. And then in addition, we have a MOA, your firm authorization to proceed. Can you just briefly address those two pieces of our packet?
Sure. Tim, do you want to address these or want me to handle them?
Why don't you go ahead and do yours and I'll do.
Yeah, sure. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Specific to the request from MOA, we're asking for official notice to move into the design development phase. You have all contracted us already previously in the initial agreement that we have with you through this work. So this is not additional scope to what we've already proposed. This is just moving to the next phase, acknowledging that we're at this point in this juncture of the estimate phase, estimate for the project and the due diligence to move forward at your all's discretion.
All right, thank you. In regard to commissioning services, we've developed a request for qualifications and fee proposal to go out and look for a proper commissioning agent or company. Unfortunately, best of my knowledge, there are none in Wyoming that I've seen in my experience. So this will probably come from Denver, maybe Montana, Billings area. But essentially what this service does is that it allows this agent to start working, once they're on board, with MOA's engineers as they start to develop more design work in the mechanical, electrical, plumbing areas of the building, along with building, what we call building envelope, or the shell of the building, which MOA will be handling, to make sure that it's put together correctly. So when everything is complete, we have a good tight envelope that's not leaking a lot of air, meets all of the minimum requirements, and mechanical, electrical systems have been vetted. At the conclusion of construction, they're tested. The commissioning agent will run it through all of the series of tests that they do to make sure all systems are operating correctly, programming is adequate, and those areas that aren't are repaired before occupancy of the building, so that when Anna and her team eventually move in, those are not issues that they have to wrestle with once they're in the building, of areas that maybe the heating is lacking for some reason, and so on and so forth. And so I believe from my past experience that a commissioning agent brings a lot of value to the project in the long term. It helps us establish and clarify issues during the design phases so that we don't run into other issues during construction, and it simplifies the closeout of the project and the operation of it once it's occupied.
May I ask a question? I kind of hesitate to ask this question, but something's telling me to ask you anyway. Should we be looking for a different site? It's less expensive to build on. I mean, I know this has been going on a long time, and pre me even being on the commission, when I hear $4 to $5 million more to build it over on the hillside by the cemetery as opposed to other locations we may have, when the public hears this, they're going to ask me, why we didn't pick a site that was less expensive? So I'm asking you guys.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Laird, if you recall, we evaluated more than 10 sites about 2 years ago. This was one of the initial sites that we evaluated. And because of the price point of the purchase of this, which to the county was zero, when you take that factor into the development costs, you would have had to purchase land at any other site at not a premium, but at market rate. That is not being accounted for into this evaluation of the overall site costs. So you have a $0 amount for well, maybe a $1. I'm not sure what you officially purchased it for, but a much discounted rate for that land that you would have had to incur on any other site that is not being accounted for in the overall project budget.
Well, that will help some of the taxpayers. But at this point, no dirt has been shoveled. Should we be looking for a different site to save $4 or $5 million?
Mr. Chairman, as it relates to the project schedule, that would push the execution of the construction out at least a year, recognizing that you would have to go renegotiate land. And each time that we push the construction start, you're impacting cost escalation and inflation as every quarter that happens. And so to think that you may realize a cost savings, if you were to go that route, I would recommend you select a free site somewhere, but you're going to lose at least a year of time in the development of that site, or planning for that site, excuse me.
So you're not recommending we do that?
I would not. I would say, based on all of the factors in the partnership with the city, this is the, albeit expensive to develop, best site. It also has co-location of a central location. It has being adjacent or near the hospital location, and it has other public services centrally located nearby the site. If you were to look in the area, which we did 2 years ago, you would be hard-pressed to find a site of this scale at a price that would bear and equal to this site.
Thank you. I appreciate your expertise.
Thank you, Commissioner Laird. And I would also note that we have received some federal funding that has some very specific deadlines for commitment and expenditure. And if we were to move to another location, we would put in jeopardy compliance with some of that grant funding. And that's it's roughly north of $10 million. Any other questions, Commissioner North?
Hannah, you know what I'm going to ask.
I know.
I mean, when you came in the first time, we were at $30 million. Now we're 34 or 5. Where's it going to stop? And what other resources are being pursued to make up that gap?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner North. So actually, thank you for asking that question. It has not been something that we have neglected in consideration. For clarification, 22.5, I believe only 5 million of that would have to be encumbered by 2025 December. The rest of it, the 10 million, I believe, is not required in that factor. Last week, I was in Washington DC and talked to the delegation from Wyoming, meeting with staffers as well as Senator Lummis to talk to them about the concerns of being able to get all of the materials that we would need within that encumbered period of time that is required, as well as, everything is moving kind of slower than we all want it to be. So while I was there, talked to them extensively about additional grant opportunities, funding, et cetera. They are very aware of the situation, what we're looking to build, why it is what it is designed to be. The federal earmarks have not absolutely been removed from the table. That was something that we were told. I don't know if those will continue to go forward, but they do recognize that we are involved with one of them at this time. There are also a low interest loan from the state of Wyoming. We have 2 grant writing groups that are working on this, as well as myself. We have some fundraising ideas, obviously not to the scale of millions of dollars, but be able to look at some of the things that we have available, possibly some company, agency, organization would be able to purchase a component of. Not sure if you're familiar with the Lander Community Center, how they have the river with the donors on that, incorporating something along those lines, naming of certain areas with support from, sponsor a tree, those things, little, chipping it away. Bringing in partners to help with cost in the flex space is also on the table. And then as we have available, we're really starting to look at those things that we could possibly get cheaper materials, change how something may be to go for the less expensive. But it is not something that I don't address or look at practically every day.
Okay, and just looking at all the wells and seeing where we can get anything, have you approached our legislators as far as getting money directly from the state and the appropriations?
Yes, so I have been working with the legislators. That is part of how we got some of the funding before. I don't know that there's anything available at this point. COVID funds are starting to go away because COVID is just becoming part of daily life. However, I am working with some of them to continue the process that this is a need, this is what we're working on, et cetera, in order to try to identify new opportunities, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner North. Thank you, team. Any other questions for the team in front of us? Commissioner Milne.
More of a light question. I was just kind of curious. Your designation for drive-through, stopping it at minus 10 degrees. I mean, it's Wyoming. What's up with that?
So we actually do have people that are out for that length of time. We did apply for a grant to CDC to purchase very heavy duty clothing. It's just mostly in the interest of wind chill factor. You will often find us still out there doing those kinds of things. But minus 40 is a little extreme.
Fine.
It does kind of tend to, when you're using fluid, freeze between 2 places. So we do recognize those kinds of things. So.
Okay. But kind of more of a serious thing though, were you with that, with the drive-through and everything, were you looking at any infrared or any type of heaters to keep that area warm, Brandon?
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, we do have a dedicated heating system out in that area that's separate from the rest of the building to keep that at temperature.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much for coming today. Also, thank you to Sampson Construction for having a couple representatives also present to listen in. I know you're all doing the best you can to help this project move forward successfully and under budget. Thank you. Lita, are you ready or do you need a minute?
I'm ready, and both of these will probably only take 2 minutes.
All right, so next we have Lita to talk about Natrona County Joint Juvenile Services Board Amendment 1 and the VRC shredding contract.
Thank you. This particular agreement, the Natrona County Community Juvenile Joint Services Powers Board Amendment Number 1, may look familiar in particular to Commissioner Friel. This was one of those gentlemen that we found in our office that had not been fully executed. And so we had to jump through quite a few hoops to get that done, which is fine. So just in case you had questions, it may have seemed like a duplicate, it is. And once we receive your signature, Mr. Chair, we will forward it on to the Attorney General's office. Okay.
Any questions for council on that one? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. With respect to the VRC contract, the reason that we wanted to speak with you about this in the work session was just to let the commission know that this contract is essentially non-negotiable. And even though they're super nice to work with, they will not make any of our suggested changes. And so we wanted to let the commission know in case that was a problem. I don't know how much exposure we have with our shredding contract, but we wanted you all to be fully informed. For example, they won't change jurisdiction and venue, what we call the Wyoming addendum, no sovereign immunity, the indemnity, issues such as that. Now, what they did offer was, and I think Michelle stepped out, but what they did offer was instead of a 3-year contract, we could have a 1-year contract. I don't believe there's any problems with the contract or the services that the shredding company provides. It's just we wanted you all to know that it does not contain the quote unquote normal provisions that we ask to be in contracts. You know, Michelle would have more details on that. I believe that they're incorporated in Tennessee, but they do have a local office. They used to be Powder River Shredding, but we do have a local representative who's super nice, easy to work with, and I believe their office is out at the airport. It's just if, you know, again, we don't believe there's a lot of exposure with this. You know, it's not a contract with a ranch for a gravel pit or anything, but I guess you never know.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I've used this company and its predecessor before in one of my businesses. They're very professional. They do a good job. I don't know that we have a lot of options here locally that are of the same caliber or close. I don't know that to be the case, but I know that there are limited options to be sure. So unless you have a recommendation that we don't enter into this agreement, I think that my feeling is we have limited exposure and can move forward. I do like the idea of maybe a 1-year deal rather than a 3 or 5 year deal, just in case. It gives a little more flexibility.
I would agree. And so what we can do in that regard is we can contact our representative, I forgot his name because I usually don't speak with him, and just let him know we'd like to enter into the 1 year and have him change the terms of this. And we can get that right back to you ASAP. They're really good.
That's true.
Was this on the consent agenda for tonight?
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, it was.
So what do you propose in that regard? Do we move forward or do we put it on hold for 2 weeks?
I believe that we could or you all could make a motion to remove it from the consent agenda, and we can just put on the 20th, or if it's already been approved, then the chair can sign when it comes in. That's up to you all.
Commissioner Mill.
Could we approve it pending a 1-year change,
Or subject to.
subject to? 1-year
Yes.
change? I'd suggest that.
I like that.
That's a good idea.
And then I can sign it when it comes in the next couple weeks. And if there's a problem, we can talk about it in 2 weeks.
The other question I'd have is when we talked to them, or when it was discussed for moving it from a 3-year to a 1-year, did it increase the cost or change any particulars like that?
Not for this year. I think it's one of those maybe next year perhaps, but not if we changed it right now.
So while we're not locked in with price too.
Correct. Similar to, renting. You only sign a 3-year lease and then, or you go month to month and they can raise it.
Okay, thank you.
My sense was the gentleman I spoke with, our contact, our representative, that was his, I guess, counter offer essentially. We can't do all these things you're asking, but we could do this for you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is a service that my office and your office use on a monthly basis too, if that helps.
And we use it as well up in legal.
Are you happy?
Yes, I'm very happy with our shredding company and the gentleman that comes and takes the secured shred box.
And they also go over to our secure storage area and will do large amounts of shredding, like once a year for us. So it's very helpful.
Now, I'm actually not seeing this on our,
Seeing what?
I'm not seeing it on the consent agenda. Am I not looking at it right?
No, now that we double check, I misspoke. I should have looked. I assumed, and we know what that does. I guess then we do not need to make a motion and
We can let it ride till next time. Okay. Well, thanks. There are A through N on our consent agenda contracts, so I think it's understandable. Anything else on the VRC shredding contract? Then let's see, we are ahead of schedule now, so that's good, congratulations. We could move into some sort of legal review discussion for a legal update. I know our county attorney has some personal issues that required her attention today. And so we would be looking to, Jared was in the room. I look up and he is no longer in the room. So we would probably be looking to Lita for any additional legal updates. Do you want to take a minute or two, or do you guys want to just move on into those items?
we can move right into the legal update. When I spoke with Ms. Duncan Malone prior to the family emergency, she did not have anything specific. Of course, we could talk about any number of issues that we're working on. But as far as something specific, she did not have.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Laird?
I am concerned with the, getting the contract over to the Realtor.
Commissioner Laird, we're going to talk about that later.
Okay,
We've been kind of working on that today.
okay.
I wanted to pull, as I mentioned to you, Lita, but I would like to pull contract on the consent agenda K, Resolution 4114A, an amended resolution approving Wyoming Horse Racing LLC to conduct. There's some language in there that I felt that I needed to talk to legal counsel about, and we, as we've mentioned, she's not been available today. So that's one that I didn't think was a pressing matter. It was just one that was done and ready to go, but I don't think it's ready to go after I look at the language of it, of that resolution. So if someone would make a motion tonight to approve the consent agenda, but to delete item K, I would appreciate it. Any questions on that item? Any other, there are no other update matters from council. Are there any questions that we should talk about in this work session? Items that are hanging out there or follow-ups for legal? Hearing none. Do you want to move into round table or do you want to take a 5-minute break?
Break.
We'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Thanks.
Somebody was taking a break. Okay. I didn't know if they also took it over.
No, I heard that.
Okay.
It's like hot, then it's cold. It was hot out here, then I took this off and I put it back on.
Well, they have work, they have work to do to get us there.
That's where I'm going, sister.
I know, that's why I bought it, so that they can keep it down here. to be horrible.
It was.
I'm sure, yeah.
It was. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we were literally spending 8 hours a day, 4 days a week, for 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks. Going through it, you know, we were rotating and taking turns. Yeah, like I said, I've learned more about this stuff than I want everyone.
I'm no expert by any means, but hopefully all of the departments involved will.
Well, we have kicked stuff back to the session in the past. In their opinion, they say, no, we did it right. And that's their final
That's
decision.
their final- yeah.
That's their final decision. Then it goes to the state. That's what's happened. That's where that, I know it's,
Well, yeah, and I think there was some confusion with that because actually that just came up in our meeting because even if, let's say they don't do, well, no, if they don't do anything, okay.
that basically they're saying.
Do they have to- right,
That
yes,
is their
they
final decision. That their final decision is, no, you were right, you were wrong, and we're sticking to it. That is their final decision.
And they don't have to issue a new,
No, they do not. They don't have to send it back to us. The only time they send it back to us, they can, is when they make it.
right,
And then it's clear, but it's just, you know, that's a, and I tell you, the tax, property tax. So they've been,
which one do you think, we'll sign off on, is that the biggest question, let's have a poll, you know,
I really don't.
maybe he'll send them back. Or find them, if it's actually on board, unfortunately, obviously, but.
This is just where they're starting. By the time we get to the end, they won't look at anything.
Right, well, and allegedly, he's supposed to find something first.
Yeah, well, I know that you can't. You can't sell, you can't sign, or you can't sign a bill. It's free.
Well, right, right,
It has to go through the whole process, all 3 readings of both houses, and then it goes to him. But it, it's, let's see. That's the first one.
right.
Part of the, it's our legislature.
Right.
It's like, bill, okay, and the counties want, you make sure that that money comes out of every piece of pie. Comes out of school district, comes out of special districts, comes out of
Yeah.
county, comes out of city, everything. The way it's written, the county took the whole. That's the reason why I would support it, is I, it's like, why should we support something that the city of Casper has no skin in the game, and they have 90% of the people that live.
Right, right.
It's just, I mean,
What are the majority of complaints or concerns you get? I'm just curious, is there one category?
yeah, so,
But even before the property tax is raised, they figure out that.
well, that's what I've been involved
Oh, gosh, sure, okay,
in. So,
okay.
before that, it's usually roads. You know, yeah.
Did you have
Roads
people
are,
contact you?
huh?
Do a lot of people contact you?
Oh, yeah,
Did you?
I probably spend,
Hours on your email?
no, I'm not even on my phone. That's been sort of, probably 12 hours.
From emailing or talking? Oh, from talking, yeah.
Hey. God. Almost. That's why I appreciate that.
We're actually going to start with commissioners. I made a little joke there. Anyway, Commissioner Friel.
The only thing I have is, we had CNFR meeting last night for the rodeo. Obviously, it's, they're starting to put things together for it. And just so everybody knows, this is the 25th year of it being here, so I'm sure there's gonna be a few added, events this year that, the commission could be certainly involved in. So I'll keep you updated as we go along.
When is that going to happen?
June 9th through, I'll get you the dates, but it's like the second week of June. So. And then I'll defer to Dave if he has any notes from our meeting the other day with the electeds.
Commissioner Friel, lake season is going to be upon us pretty quick. I don't know if the nature and extent of any changes to the lottery system can be incorporated this year. Maybe in the next meeting or so, we can talk about lake lottery matters. If not to get stuff done this year, then at least to kind of have a framework for moving forward on one or more issues going on out there.
So I just have one question that needs to be answered by Regan, and I think that I can come back and talk to you about the thoughts on the lottery system. And while we're on that topic, planning has had their, they have a budget item where they put dumpsters out in different places and have neighborhood cleanups. Last year, we did take an extra dumpster out to the lake because it does seem that when the people, whether it's trailers or, well, mainly over in the trailer area itself, when they start the new season, they seem to go out there and clean house, and it ends up being broken furniture and items of the such that get thrown away, and they fill those dumpsters up quick. So I would like to suggest that maybe we do take another dumpster out there again this year, and just that way we have it in one central location. We're not filling all the other dumpsters up. I don't know what everybody's thoughts are on that, but I know it was very well received and appreciated last year.
I wouldn't have a problem with it. Anybody have a problem with it or on board with it?
Last year we had Michael just set that up and take care of that. And that's always been an issue out there. I mean, it just has, and it's gotten to be more and more popular. So I do think that we get a lot of bang for the buck by doing that early in the season. Do it over Memorial Day or something like that, where lots of people are out there and they can actually utilize it.
If I can do it, so I keep thinking of things as we go along. So I don't know if legal can answer this, but we still have one trailer out there that we're working on getting removed, correct?
Should be good quick. Pat has came on. He did go out there and reassess the building, and it was in worse condition than what he had originally thought. So it's demolished.
Pat had mentioned that he was, you keep getting letters returned. I guess the person's deceased, and
We have zero contact information, updated contact information for the owner of that trailer. Yeah, the lease expired in 2014, so we're almost 20 years at this point. One of the owners is deceased and the other has taken off. Any contact, any mailing we've done has been sent back several times.
so my hope is that we can finalize that and get that last one done prior to April 15th, so that lot can at least be cleaned off and
Yes.
an actual lease check can be accepted that hasn't been able. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Friel. Commissioner Laird? Or we can go with Commissioner Mel.
I'm good. I'm good.
Warmed up. Okay.
We have had a lot of talk about the hospital. And there's, to say people are disgruntled probably would be the kindest way to put it with the new owners. Some of the things that are said are probably not fair, and some do need to be addressed. And I know we're working on reestablishing the Wyoming Medical Center Board, and I think we should get that fired up, is I guess my way of putting it. I have been approached by a couple people who are concerned about the foundation, amount of money they have, the amount of money they're spending, their salaries, that kind of thing. Our oversight, this was explained to me by our county attorney, Heather Duncan Malone. When she looked at the contract, we had oversight, some sort of oversight for 3 years, and the 3 years have expired. Now the foundation only has to come in here once a year instead of what they have been doing. There is a person that seems to be quite knowledgeable in understanding foundations. I was a resident, well-known resident of our community, and Mr. Millen, I would really like to see her be on this board, but she won't make a decision yet. And I know the chairman's spoken to her, so I don't know where that is, but she would be a very welcome addition because she understands having been on a board of another hospital in another community and that kind of thing. But I talked to a friend of mine who was a doctor who left town just the other day. He's now in North Carolina. And he went to work for this new hospital, which had bought out the older hospital. And he said it's almost the same problems that is happening there, and how the people are receiving this new owner and what have you. And they're afraid, our people are a little bit afraid. And I would somehow like to put fears to rest for elderly people who are afraid of our own hospital. One of the things he said happened is the newspaper went around and interviewed the commissioners who had sold the hospital to ask them if now, as they look back, would they have done, if it came up today, would they do the same thing? And we didn't get into any more detail than that, but he was one who left, him and his brother both, because of a lot of these issues. And they're Wyoming guys, and I sure hated to see them both leave. The retired physicians, probably like 95% of them are very concerned. And I honestly don't know what we as commissioners can do about it. I'm hearing other things from different agencies that send people there and what happens with elderly people, and that are very concerning to me. But I think a lot of times it can be explained if we can get an explanation from the CEO or whoever's involved, and I think they should be given an opportunity to do that. So I did contact a couple of people. One, her name is Kim Jones. She's the one that did the city's work for evaluation of the buildings. And she sent some emails, and I think I sent them to everybody. And this is the company that, when she explained how they evaluate these buildings and how they decide, when they wear out and putting you on a maintenance schedule so that it isn't something that is only done when something blows up. I would really like to see us take a very hard look at that and put that to a vote as to whether we should do that. I think the city's very happy with it. It doesn't, I think the city had 125 buildings and they have 33 buildings that are being followed by this company. And it's in more detail than I would have thought. I really wish you guys could have heard this woman explain it. I just don't have the expertise to explain it the way she did, but I think it's a very important thing. And lastly, something that's bothered me for some time, and I know it's bothered our coroner and probably bothers more people than you realize. There was an article in the Casper Star Tribune a while back. Let me get to this. I sent you guys all a picture of the item that kind of expresses my whole feelings about the situation. The article was "A Missing Person with No Memory." My wife has begun specializing in gerontology and dementia. She works for assisted living, and she sees it all the time, and she sees how it affects us. We went to see a movie that this lady made that's playing here in town on dementia, and she got in her van and her friend, and they traveled to the United States, and they spoke to all these people who were taking care of their mothers and fathers and sisters, and it was sure eye-opening to me to see how sad this problem is. But somebody comes here with no memory and they die. We can't find their relatives, and we by statute we're authorized to deal with the care of people who die in this county. And so there was a picture along with this, and I'll be done in just a second, Mr. Chairman. It's a memorial statue. It's in another town and another state, I believe. Very nice headstone. Looks like it's about 8 feet tall. It says, "This memorial is dedicated to those..." This is a close thing to me too, but "This memorial is dedicated to those whose earthly remains were entrusted to the care of the people of Cook County. May their souls rest in peace." I've been involved with people who had someone die and they couldn't find them. If we had a chaplain, we could at least see that they got a Christian burial. That's what I'd like to see. See it in movies all the time. We're not going to leave these guys. We're going to give them a Christian burial. They get out the shovels and they dig a hole and they put them in there. It's the way we did it in Wyoming. So I'd sure like the commission to consider this issue.
Commissioner Friel.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chair, on, we've had the coroner in here several times talking about these remains that he's been entrusted with, and he's talked about having a sea can and put some shelves in there, just take care of them. And I don't know if we've had a discussion on it, but where the land is for the health department right now, which is right next to the cemetery, I don't think we're utilizing all that land that, obviously a good majority of it's going to take up the campus of the health department itself. But I believe down in the bottom to the north of where the health department will be built, between the cemetery and the health department itself, there may be some extra or leftover land. Can we look into that and see if that's a possibility of at least a location that we could put some of the, we could have a plot to put some of these remains in? these unknown remains are the ones that have been entrusted to us, and we can't find family members for. At least then they kind of right at what Dallas is saying. I mean, at least then they have a final resting spot, if you will.
I think that we can ask the questions. And I know that we are currently looking at rerouting a fiber line and a overhead power line to an underground power line to the northern section of the property. Along, in conjunction with this construction project, we were just, the executive committee, the executive building committee for the health department project was just talking about the relocation, because that work needs to be done sooner rather than later this spring or first part of the summer. There are some drainage issues, that's part of why we're not using that spot. The same time, we had, as I recall, thought maybe we could utilize some of this property for either an expansion of the health department or a standalone if in the event that another related agency came with perhaps their own money to the table and said, we want to utilize some of that real estate for things that might have, a relationship with the daily activities of the health department, Life Steps campus, and kind of that medical corridor in general. So I think that it's certainly not all going to be used for this current building project or its pavement, parking areas. So we can look at it, and we ought to start visiting about it now. Maybe it is something that we could incorporate in one area on this, or maybe we need to continue to think about other options for it.
I just simply think that I don't think we're asking for, it wouldn't be a large amount of space it would be taken up, and depending on how we go about doing it, but it seems like he's got quite a few of them out there, and it just makes sense that if there was somewhat of an extension off the cemetery where we take people to, then it would just kind of make sense. So that's why I bring it up, if there was a possibility of that, and I get expansion of everything, but if there is, just happens to be enough land out there to do something like that, I'd like to see that happen.
Since we really haven't talked about it before as this land being used for cemetery purposes, I wonder if the city has some land that is in the Highland Park Cemetery proper that maybe it would partner with us on, that we could put those remains there.
Well, and I don't think that's a bad idea either, because I do believe that there's a section of it that's just simply for children that have passed. So maybe something similar to that.
So I will bring it up with the building executive committee. We meet every other Monday, but I can probably send out an email now or sooner than our next meeting. And then if next time I talk with the city manager, maybe we can bring that up as well. Commissioner Milne, did you want to chime in?
Chime in on this? Yeah. Actually, no, this is a good discussion. I would like to hear maybe from legal or our coroner about the legal requirements of how long we have to remain in custody of the remains. If the state has any guidance as far as whether we can how many years down the road are we able to spread the ashes, or are we required to keep them indefinitely, or what? I think that would help this discussion a little bit. The other thing that we could potentially do is, yes, the city potentially may be able to assist us, but we have other cemeteries throughout the county as well that we could potentially work with to have a memorial. I don't know if it'd be like a vault system or if it would be a area where we could spread those remains after that time frame is gone, where the coroner no longer needs to have possession of them. But I think I'd like to hear from legal as to where and how far, how long, and then that would help framework what we need to do potentially moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Milne. Commissioners, with respect to this issue, I'm not sure when it was. I think it was a meeting did not attend. Mr. Laird had asked legal to look into this, and I agree with Commissioner Laird. It's sad. But when we met with the coroner, and I've talked to Fremont County to look into this, it ended up being, of course, like an onion, right? You think it's just one issue and just more and more layers. So I have a memo into Miss Duncan Malone. It's 6 pages. It's pretty detailed. And she is reviewing that. So that's where legal stands. As far as, I believe the coroner told us at the time we met with him that he has 22 cremains pending, waiting. And we don't have any statutory guidance regarding the statutes distinguish between indigent and unclaimed. However, in typical fashion, with all due respect to the legislature, they use them interchangeably. They don't necessarily mesh, but we do have an unclaimed remains statute. And arguably, and again, we may be out of statutory compliance because we are not burying the bodies. Again, we're still looking into that upstairs because it was one thing that seemed, simple enough, but then blossomed into several other issues we're looking into. Now, do you have specific questions, sir? Because Commissioner Milne, didn't you ask if there?
Just like some guidance on it.
Okay.
Because that would help us
Yes.
figure out what we need to do. Is
Yes.
taking a piece of land is where there's a nice monument,
Well-
that we can spread the ashes, or do we have to have like a little vault system there, or just how do we go about this?
Well, with respect to the unclaimed versus indigent, and it gets confusing how that works, but with respect to the unclaimed, the statute says something to the effect of the body shall be buried. And so, but they're not being buried because we don't have a place to do that. I mean, that's just the shortened statute. I didn't bring that, obviously. And so that's one of the things we're looking into is, so for example, in Fremont County, they follow the statute because they have an MOU with, I'm not sure whom, and they bury their unclaimed remains out there. Also, if you look at some of the other statutes that interplay, cremains are not considered remains, and so I don't know if we could bury the cremains versus the actual body. So that's what I mean. When we started looking into it, it turned, of course, into a bigger concern to look into.
So if you,
Sorry.
if you can, on top of everything else you and your department legal's doing, maybe we can get some answers. Maybe we can get this memo in the next 2 weeks, or at least, in the next 30 days.
Sure, I will speak with Miss Duncan Malone when she's back. I know she stated that she had read through part of it, but of course I had however many attachments and statutes and policies attached, so.
Commissioner Laird, did you have anything else?
I did mention this to the coroner, showed him this headstone that I read to you guys, and he wants to do something different. I can tell you that much. I can't speak for him, of course, but he seems like a kind man, and I don't think he feels that we're showing the proper care and dignity to these people. And I think we should change it as soon as we can.
Well, thank you for bringing this up, and we do know that the coroner is thinking a lot about these issues, and I don't want to put words in his mouth either, but because he keeps bringing it to our attention, I think he does care greatly about this issue, and so I commend him as well. There are a lot of different issues here. One is a memorial, one is actual remains. So let's all just try to do our part to continue the discussion sooner rather than later and not let it drop for another 6 months.
Oh, no.
I mean, it hasn't been 6 months, but it's been kind of off and on every 3 months. So, okay, Commissioner Milne, you want to go next?
Yeah, just a couple things real quick. Excuse me. So I agree that with you, Commissioner Laird, the hospital thing, and find some information out for their, for what's going on. Talk to the CEO, Mr. Porter. But before that, next week is the legislative meeting of WCCA. I'd really like to see, if possible, everybody go. It's a really good information. If you can't go and are still in town on the 15th, though, is a business after hours at Banner where you could discuss things with Mr. Porter. So if you're still in town and unable to go down to the WCCA, I'd really recommend that you go to this and have a discussion with Mr. Porter and their new operations. Because while we're hearing things about Banner, I've also begun to start hearing things about the other hospital coming in as well for its services. Nothing's rosy, or everything's not greener over the fence. So I think our medical or our healthcare concerns in this county are a lot of people have a lot of concerns. Let's just put it that way. That's about all I got. Other than the health building, as it moves forward, I think while there is a lot of concern about the increase, and I'm concerned about it as well, of the budget, I think it's to be expected with what the market's doing, what it's currently, what it's going to continue to do. And I hope it doesn't, we need to keep an eye on it, watch that it doesn't continue just spiral out of control. But I believe we do have funding out there between the community, the federal, the state, different aspects of that. We did some of the hospital funds from the purchase of the hospital that we received. I'm not talking about using any of the principal, but potentially, the hospital, healthcare building, maybe that's a good place to use some of the returns from the interest rates that we'll be getting now. And those are doing really well. 5.27, I think, from PFM, and 5.38, I believe, from Peak. So we're doing good. And that's all I have.
Commissioner Milne, if I may.
Hi.
Just to spin off speaking with Mr. Porter, Ms. Duncan Malone and I spoke with Mr. Porter regarding some Title 25 potential issues, and it went really well. He was very open and receptive. He came here. I had never met him before then, and I don't know exactly the concerns of the elderly, but just to give you, as you said, there'll be a business after hours to the chamber there. He was very easy to work with, easy to get over here. We did not have any concerns meeting with him regarding his willingness to work with us.
So let me interrupt you for a second. So since you brought that up
Sure.
and you were saying he's willing to work with us, my understanding of that issue was that we were receiving bills from third parties for thousands of dollars, and we were potentially going to be on the hook for those, even though under our agreement with the banner, I think, says at no additional cost to us, or it says at banner's cost. So I didn't think there was really a contractual issue to be talking about. Am I, so now they've clarified that we're not going to incur that cost?
Yes, and that part of the meeting was, he was unaware that these third parties, they're not actually even sending us a bill, they're sending us an insurance claim form. Clearly, we're not an insurance carrier. And so he was not aware of that. And on his end, he did agree with us that we weren't responsible. We had, I mean, we have stacks of those insurance claim forms coming
seen
from,
'em.
right, wherever they're coming from. And he did agree that, and he took copies of them all, that they should not be coming to us. We're not responsible.
Good.
And he also went through, we have received some actual bills from third parties, and he was great in explaining, if you ever get a bill from these entities, they're actually part of Banner, this entity's not part of Banner, we have these agreements with these different medical facilities. You know, we weren't sure how it was going to go because that is a touchy subject, money and mental health. But I just wanted to say he was very easy to work with.
Mr. Chairman, also just to kind of segue off of that meetings, I know there's been several, or at least one larger meeting between Banner and some of our local representatives that were concerned about what was going on in the community and have had discussions with them. And secondhand, like Jim Anderson, secondhand, I've heard that he's has a lot better understanding and a better feeling of what's going on with Banner at this time than he did, and doesn't quite have the same concerns that he did at the time prior to the meeting. So I think there just needs to be some more communication potentially. And so I just encourage, if you're not going to go to WCCA, go to this after hours on the 15th.
I'll circle back to this in a few minutes. Commissioner North?
Okay.
Oh.
It wasn't bad. I got a few things this time around. We'll start out with the Midwest Water Line. They're making progress. WWC is actually the ones that the engineering company that's actually working on that right now. They're at the point now where they're working on finalizing the design. They're working on the cathodic protection and how much they're going to need as far as that goes up in that area, and the materials. And they will be sending that out to bid here before too much longer. The portion that we are obligated to, I'm not sure exactly where or when that's going to come due, but it's going to come due sometime fairly soon, in my estimation, because that's basically going to cover the engineering cost for that project. But at least it's moving forward, and they're looking at some other options right now as far as putting in. They're going to have to replace some pumps and do some other stuff too. I talked to Tracy Sutherland on that, and they're working on getting everything set so it's good to go. That's about as much as I can share on that part of it right now. The next thing is the shooting complex. 4 of us went down to the Cameo Shooting Complex down in Colorado last weekend. And it's an amazing facility. Where it's set and how it's done is phenomenal. That gave us some really good ideas that we can put forth in our proposal to get the Central Wyoming Shooting Complex put together, and hopefully that'll come together, and that'll be a huge benefit to the county, to the state, and just basically to this region, because you're going to have a lot of people moving in and out for those. I mean, a lot of those events have 500 people that come in for them, just shooting. not their families and stuff like that. So it's a big boom to the economy. Colorado in Grand Junction area, that represents, that shooting complex down there represents about 22 million in economic development every year right now. They were at a steady growth income until they implemented the capacity ban for their magazines. And there was a lot of the companies or a lot of the groups that pulled out at that time. They quit shooting there. So we have that opportunity to really jump on board and actually bring something and help us diversify even more as far as our economy goes here. So you guys got any questions about that?
I do, Commissioner. How many, these tournaments that take place, what kind of numbers?
They've got one that they put on down there that's done by a girl with a gun. They're expecting, that's going to be coming up, I think, in March, if I remember right, and they're expecting 825 people at that one event. And they spend money all through the community. It's not just the ammunition. They actually supply, buy a lot of that ammunition and actually goes through that location, but they, they're in hotels, they're spending money in the stores, they're doing a lot of stuff down there. So there's a whole lot of different ones that they do. In the individual groups, it's kind of different because what they do is they allow the different clubs to actually sponsor these events, and then they charge a per head fee at that. And so it's not just the money that's coming in to the facility, but it's also that money that's being disseminated throughout the local groups that are doing that stuff.
So I guess I asked that question. Do they happen to drill down in the weeds how people get there? And where I'm going with that is, how do they drive, or how does the air traffic?
They do both. They drive and they use air traffic. And it's a lot of the people that come in for short-term events where they're coming in, they're just traveling just specifically like for that event. A lot of those will fly in. A lot of them will drive in as well. It just depends. And a lot of these guys will they'll figure out what the best loop is, where they can hit the most events in a certain time frame, and then they'll do it that way. And whether that's driving or flying, it just depends a lot on where it is and what the logistics are as far as getting in and out.
I guess the reason I ask that is if you have 400 people that come in and a quarter of them decide to fly, I mean, that could have a huge impact on the MRG that we're putting out right now, and potentially keep our air traffic here, but maybe get rid of that.
Yeah, and one of the things that we were told by the manager down there is that our biggest draw for this is going to be out of the Front Range. We will have a lot of people flying in from all over the country, but the majority of the people that they anticipate that would be drawing would be coming out of the Front Range, because it's short distance. They can come up here, spend a day shooting, spend a night, spend another day shooting, and then head home and be home that night. And that was kind of the impression that I got. So it's hard to say just exactly how many will fly initially, but there's always, it's just like the Governor's Cup that we have up here right now. There's a lot of guys that come in that fly in for that and they stay, but there's also a lot of guys that drive, or, because as far as bringing your ammunition and stuff like that, it's not feasible to put that on a plane and try to bring it up with you.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not trying to suggest it's going to do away with the MRG, but it certainly would have an impact on it to where it's not where it's at today. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. This could be very beneficial for that, in my opinion.
yeah, we'll see what happens. We have to have the proposal in by the 1st of March, and one of the legislators anticipated that we'll have it narrowed down pretty close within 60 days. So I'm hoping, knock on wood, I think we're going to have a really, really good proposal. I do think this meets all the criteria that we're looking at, and I think it'd really be beneficial for the entire state because of where this is located. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
And you probably saw in your packet the letter that they asked to be sent to them by yesterday. So I went ahead and slightly modified the form they suggested, but I noted that we did meet all of the criteria and that our location and our airports and everything else made it a great choice. So, yeah, I think the commission fully supports the shooting complex. So, good. Thank
It'll
you.
be good. And then
What else?
I got a few more. It's my turn. Yeah. We did have the elected officials meeting on Tuesday or Monday this week, and that was good. I think was it Monday this week? When do we have it? Last week. They all blend together. Yeah. I think the one thing that everybody's concerned about, we talked a lot about the property taxes. I did get a copy of all the current bills that have been submitted for property taxes, and I've been reading through that. I think there's some work to be done. And I'm hoping that we can work with some of our legislators next week when we're down in Cheyenne and give them some input on what we would like to see as far as helping everybody out on that. The other thing, the electeds do appreciate having, for our department head meetings, they did appreciate having all that information sent out so that they have that in black and white so they can see what's going on, with the county. They know what's going on in their own departments, but they don't necessarily know what's going on everywhere else, and that helps out. The other thing we last week, we also had a couple of contractors come down and actually walk through the roof, over the roof at the detention center so that they can get that bid out to us. And so hopefully we'll get those numbers back to us fairly soon so we can get that on the schedule. Yeah. So, okay. That's it.
Commissioner Friel.
If I can just add also to the elected officials, correct me if I'm wrong, the clerk of district court was saying that right along the lines with the coroner's office, they're entrusted with all the property. Right. So if you have people that are unclaimed and then you've got unclaimed property, they have to hold on to that. So that's a whole nother, issue. Yeah. Okay, I'm just bringing it up to you so you know. So.
I have a number of things. We haven't filled our planner position at this point. It is a tough market out there. As the commission knows, there are way more planning jobs out there available than there are qualified planners. We may or may not have that position filled in the near future. I think it's prudent for us to assume that we won't. And the question came up this morning. And the question has come up from our clerk also in terms of moving forward into the budgeting process. We presently, because we don't have a planner, I think we have there's some risk of not serving the public as well as we can and should, and not serving the planning commission, a few of whom are fairly new and probably need more rather than less assistance. The planning staff is good and they're doing their jobs, but I don't think they've been through the budgeting process. Patrick is helping out. Others are also helping out. GIS is helping out. When questions arise that are really more of the planning variety, I wanted to ask for your thoughts on whether we might reach out for a temporary contract position to have a company serve as our contract planning to advise and counsel. That's what WLC has had a number of individuals that have acted as, for example, one or more of the town's planner or planning department when issues come up. There are some retired former planners. I don't know if any of them might be interested. I'm thinking that it might be smart to try to retain outside planning services for some oversight and assistance to keep the wheels spinning in the right direction and to maybe weigh in on things like budgeting. Well, they might not know specifically, what the last year and the year before's budget included, but they could probably at least ask questions. Hey, have you thought about this and what about that? And maybe it's a 90-day thing, 120-day thing is kind of what I'm thinking. I haven't done anything more with it, but I wanted to bring it up today and get your thoughts. Commissioner North.
That works out really well, because if we don't have a lot of stuff going on, we don't have a lot of money going out and taking care of that. And we have utilized that in the past, and it works extremely well because, I know CEPI as well as WLC. There's several. I don't want to leave out anybody in particular.
We don't mean to.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying these are ones that I know of that we've used, that others have used also, and I know there's others out there. I don't necessarily know if we need to do a time constraint on it, just because we have absolutely no clue how long it's going to take before we find somebody that's going to fit into our system and do what we need to do. But I do think that's a really smart idea. For one thing, we don't have the burden on top of it. It's a flat rate. We pay that bill and it's taken care of. And so, and we utilize them when we need them. And if we don't need them for something, if we don't have a lot of projects coming up, then we don't have to worry about it so much. So I do think that that's a really good idea to do that. And I was actually going to suggest doing that. So you just beat me to the punch on that. So, but I do think that's a good idea.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Commissioner Laird.
I watch other entities when they have an opening. If they want a really good football coach, they got to pay him. And maybe we're not in the right area with what money we offer to pay somebody, especially somebody, that's living in, I think we were lucky to get one man to come and work for us who lived in another state far away. But we might want to reconsider advertising the position and paying more money.
The feedback I've received from people out there isn't the insufficiency of the dollars. I mean, you mentioned when you want to coach, I think that we need to be generally in line with what the market is, and I'm confident that we are. If we doubled the salary, we'd probably have, people from all over the world apply. I don't think that's a good use of the taxpayers' funds. I'm comfortable with where we're at right now based upon the information that our HR has provided, and she watches very closely the salaries and for this particular position. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't think at this point we need to do anything dramatic with with what we have out there for the position.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Miller.
So I guess it must have been before you came on. We have done a contractor for this very thing before in the past. It worked out fairly well. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, but I don't believe they were in part of the budget process or anything like that. That was handled through the other portion of that department. I believe planning handled both budgets at that point for that year.
That's correct.
I didn't understand what you just said. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we've got the planning, we got the
Building.
permitting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a contractor for the planning, but they didn't work with the budget at all. The permitting director or manager, whatever you want to call him, he did the budget for both of them with Tracy's assistance.
Well, and that might be
The
great
contractor,
in an ideal situation, but our building official, although very capable, hasn't been through the budget
Right.
process with us yet.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I would be more than happy to assist with what little knowledge that I have of the budget to help these people out as far as submitting a budget for either or both departments for this upcoming budget cycle.
and there's past directors that we could potentially reach out to and see if they'd assist as well.
Good. Let's, unless there's, I'm not hearing any objections. Commissioner Friel, you good with us? So let's work on it, and I will get with legal and our clerk and you and Dave, since you were here, and then we'll have some more discussion and probably some answers at our next meeting. All right. With respect to the MRG, things like the shooting complex, things like the air races, which we haven't heard anything that I know of yet, but you know, we're on the short list for that. Things like the sports ranch, things like some of the other activities going on in our community are going to only help fill the seats on the Delta and the United flights. I have been spending a lot of time the last 2 weeks talking with the Fly Casper Alliance people and other people in this county and in nearby counties about their familiarity and use of our airport and the United and the Delta flights. And I've received a lot of support, or, you know, people that are very supportive. I have suggested that we need more than letters, and you heard me say that during our meeting when Fly Casper Alliance was here. We're working on some funding sources from other than the state of Wyoming and this county. I think that's important to have skin in the game, and hopefully we'll make some tangible and substantial progress on that in the next 30 days. Did you have something? Go ahead.
The only thing I wanted to add to that is, it seems since our last meeting that it's not necessarily having people in seats that would help that MRG go down. It's also potentially putting, what's the best word for it? Cargo. Yeah, putting cargo on those planes. So as long as there's something going on that plane, that would help the MRG go down. So I found that interesting, that you don't have to have people on it to keep it going and to bring those numbers down.
Yep, thank you for that. I wanted to say that we should move forward with the facilities assessment and report. We just are in a period, or we're at a place right now where that's a challenge. We have mentioned it to Garrett last couple times I've seen him, and he is trying to start to work on you know, the start of, I guess, an assessment of different facilities, and I think has some direction. I think that we should at some point retain a third-party professional to assist. I think we need to just understand and define those parameters, because I think we could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that pretty easily. Looking at the tile in every bathroom of these old buildings, I don't think that's what we want. So I think we need to help refine the nature and scope. And ordinarily our facilities and maintenance director would help us. Right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern on this issue, and I don't know if legal, you can work with Commissioner Laird and me. We have some examples of, and I think we should get our heads together and kind of see if these are the things that we want, or if it's beyond the scope, so that we can actually make progress on this. Whether we can implement it this quarter, I don't know. I'm a little doubtful. But if we just continue to say we ought to do it, but we're not really refining that, I don't think we're going to make much progress. So, legal, if you can get together with Commissioner Laird and me, or anybody else that really wants to jump in on this, that's great. But I'd like to see that meeting happen in the next 2 weeks for a path forward. The Memorial Board of Trustees, the Board of Trustees of Memorial Hospital of Natrona County, Wyoming, is the party under the post-closing operations agreement with Banner and the Wyoming Medical Center Foundation, now known as the Collective Health Trust of Natrona County, or something to that effect. The Board of Trustees is our vehicle for, quote, monitoring the Banner party's compliance with their obligations under the agreement. I think there are contractual reasons to keep that Board of Trustees going, which we have done, but to make it more active. And Commissioner Laird, that is, you're the liaison to that at this time. But I'd like to see that meet in the next, by the end of this calendar quarter. And I think we can meet with legal, and we can talk about issues pertaining to the Banner parties and to the foundation or collective. There are some specific things that each of those parties is to do. And while we might not be able to have contractually require the foundation or collective to come in here every 6 months, annually, they are required to come in here. But knowing the executive director, I think that if we said, can you come in every 6 months, she would come in. I think that they would be willing to do that. I don't know that, but I'm expecting that to be the case based on prior conversations over the years. I do think that's an important thing to get going again for lots of different reasons. One of the things that's interesting to me that I saw the other day is that the agreements specifically contemplate the foundation buying the hospital back. Not the county, but the foundation, the collective health trust buying the hospital back. I don't know if that's in anybody's best interest, but I had forgotten that was.
I think Banner has to agree to it, though.
I
don't think you can
know.
just demand. I think that's what I was explained to me by Heather.
Okay. So in any event, we can see where that conversation goes. Has everybody had a chance to look at all of the parcels of property identified by the city of Casper that might be included in the property exchange, the property swap? I'm familiar with a lot of them, but I haven't laid eyes on all of
Yeah, I
them.
haven't either.
I kind of suggested to the city manager that maybe in 30 days, we could, try to make some progress. And so let's try before our next meeting to individually determine which of those parcels that the city's identified have special concern or areas where we need our legal department or our planning department or need more information about. And I'm working with some of our departments to identify issues, and frankly, we haven't found a lot of big issues yet.
These are the properties they want to trade to us or they want
Correct.
from us.
They want from us. They want from us, but I mean, we ought to be thinking about any issues with the property that would be coming to us as well. So get with me between now and the next meeting if you have specific properties that you want to talk more about, or that we want staff to go out and do more research on.
I know a couple times when I was on the city council, they wanted people to look at property, so they got their bus together and we met down there and we all got on and they took us around and we looked at the property. I don't know if that could be a way of doing it here or not.
If that's something you'd like, maybe we can schedule that. I don't know if we can get that scheduled with being down at, most of us being in Cheyenne next week. If we can get that done in the next 2 weeks, but we'll see. We ought to at least make the effort on our own to see the bigger parcels or the special parcels if we can't make time to see them all. The budget is going to quickly be on us, and I'm working with our clerk on the budget letter. We're not going to ask for a status quo budget because I think that sometimes people have the sense that that means that it's just not more than last year, which then gives them kind of a license to be at where they were at last year. So in any event, we're going to be needing to look at the numbers closely during this budget session. So I think that the letter will reflect that. Michelle, did you want to talk about potential CBOE dates, or do we want to do a little more research on that? Okay. You did see probably from Michelle the dates for the budget hearings. We're going to tie those into our second May meeting so that in the morning we'll do outside boards. We'll have our work session, then our regular session, and then the next day, Wednesday, I forget, 22? 22nd, we'll do all of the,
That you're talking the end of May? Because I'm going to be gone like around after the first Tuesday meeting in May. I'm going to be gone for a couple days.
okay, well, it's for our second meeting in May. It's right in the Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll have the elected officials that Wednesday afternoon. Something that's probably new to most of you is the state judicial branch, state court administrator Lisa Butler got in touch with me. They are implementing a pilot court navigator program in Natrona County to help self-represented litigants maneuver the court system. What they are hoping for is this commission, in consultation with our clerks and our judges across the street, to see if we can find an office. We need basically an office space to dedicate to this pilot program. And the initial discussions, I think, with the clerks is that there might be office space available. The only cost to the county, there won't be a disruption to the clerks or the judges or the court proceedings. It's just to help pro se litigants. And the only cost might be if we have to pull cabling to set up some sort of connectivity. I don't know if that's phone line or internet, but it's that kind of thing. And that stuff probably already exists in the existing offices over there. There wouldn't be any remodeling costs to my knowledge. So, subject to the approval of the people actually in that building all the time, that is, the clerks and the judges and their staff, are there any concerns with providing, we don't have to provide humans. That's not, so we don't have any staffing obligations, but are there any concerns or problems with us trying to find a space to donate to that pilot program or for the use of that pilot program?
It sounds to me, Mr. Chairman, I got involved in one of those, and what happens now is the clerks all have these forms for people that can't afford to hire a lawyer to get divorced and for child custody battles. And I looked at some of those forms, and I don't know how anybody navigates those without help. And so it sounds to me like it's an office where the people can come in and meet with some lawyer.
No, it's specifically not to provide legal services or legal advice. It's to provide guidance on the process and procedures. So they wouldn't staff it with legal counsel. It would be staffed with people who understand the process and procedures. So basically people know to show up to court when and where and that kind of stuff. The clerks, I think, are in part burdened by some of the questions, and some of those clerks know the answers and some don't, and some are, all of them are busy with lots of other things. So I think it's trying to provide a dedicated resource for that process and procedural stuff to better serve pro se parties.
Yeah, I'm glad they're doing that. It's because I have a case now where the guy lost custody of his child because he didn't show up for court, but he didn't get a notice to show up for court down in Douglas. And there was some little hanky-panky going on there, I think, so that wouldn't happen. So I'm glad they're doing something, but I'm trying to figure out who it is they're going to staff it with that would be able to navigate it themselves. But I'm not against finding them an office if that's what you're talking about.
The Administrative Office of the Courts provides the oversight, training, resources, and support for these court navigators. They're called court navigators. They are working with Casper College, LCCC down in Cheyenne, and the College of Law to try and get the staffing and the volunteers that they'd need to support the program. But yeah, for us, it's an office.
So Mr. Chairman, it sounds like a good program. The only concern I'd have would be potentially future obligation and expenses and stuff like that. Once it's set up and on the ground, if for whatever reason the county needed to back out, how would that affect the community at that point?
I don't know how it would affect the community. If it's significantly utilized by pro se litigants, it could impact the community significantly, and then your constituents would be mad. Our constituents would be mad. I think that, and I don't know, but at some point a memorandum of understanding could be entered into, and maybe it's for a finite period of time, and then maybe it's renewed, maybe it's not, maybe it's renegotiated, maybe it's not. I think that if there were some reason to terminate it, if it is a disruption, they've confirmed, or they've told me, promised me it won't be. If there's a security issue, I specifically said, is this going to be people running around different parts of the courthouse? And it's not that at all, because the word navigator to me was a little unclear. But in any event, Commissioner Milne, it seems that you could have, subject to counsel and subject to what the people with the judicial branch might want, you could have the, hey, we have a problem. And then if it's not cured or commenced to be cured within 30 days, then it could be terminated on 30 days notice. Something like that, if we felt we needed to do that.
So it sounds like we would give them an office. They would have some staff in there. They would have 25 people that day coming in to be told how to fill out their forms. And specifically the items, 'cause if you look at these documents they give people, I don't even think 10% of them can navigate the paperwork itself. And that's what you're talking about. I think it's navigating the paperwork, because it's difficult. And so we would be giving them an office and these people would be coming in and out of there to sit down with somebody, is the way I'm feeling what you're saying. I'm not sure I'm right. And then there'll be somebody sitting there that helps them fill that 20-page document. Is that what you think it is?
No, I think it is, there's somebody sitting there to say, all right, if you want to sue somebody and, it's $1,000, small claims is your way, it's third, fifth, fourth, second floor, it's been too long. So it's not somebody necessarily to help fill out any forms or provide any legal advice. It's somebody to say, here's the process. And so I think it's slightly different, but it is a human being in an office and they're meeting with people that go through our court system. The civil side of our court system.
That's true. But we need to set up the office, desks, trash, janitorial services. I mean, we're already saddled with one state office that we have to pay for.
Which is,
Yeah,
I mean, not Ed.
no, everyone, the child guardian, yeah.
I don't know if we have to provide a desk. I would think we have some desks and chairs lying around. But I've heard two questions and clarifications from you that are, we essentially, if I'm hearing you right, we don't want this to turn into an unfunded mandate or an unfunded situation. And I get that and I appreciate that. And I think we can make that abundantly clear in our MOA so that if the deal looks like it's turning to a cost based for the county, a cost-based deal, then we can get out of it or modify it or terminate it, whatever.
Devil's in the details.
Devil's in the details. Okay, thank you. That's all I had. It is 4:40. Unless there's anything else. Yes.
One thing regarding the agenda for tonight, in anticipation of the health department potentially coming in this afternoon and specifically asking for a budget increase. We did put on the agenda a request for budget increase. Since they just came in and gave an update today, they didn't actually specifically request any additional funding yet. I think it would be appropriate for one of you to make a motion to remove that from the agenda.
Where's that at?
It's on the front page of it.
Oh, there we go.
We do that during the meeting.
It's 6A.
So remove that funding request, 'cause they won't be here anyway.
Well, they didn't specifically make.
So, that's true. But, and I don't know that we have established a dollar amount for this, you know, that we're locked in at 22.5 million anyhow presently. I think that was what we had believed, and we were, you know, now where we are doing the building and the project, and all I want to be clear about is by taking it off, we're not saying, yes, it's going to be this, and it's not, I don't want sleight of hand and then have the public say, well, wait, I didn't think it was going to be 34.5 million, because it's going to be, for the construction costs, 34.5 million. So,
Yes, correct, Mr. Chair. What my anticipation was on this was for potentially requesting the commission and the county to give them more money for the project. Specifically, right now, the county has agreed to fund, I don't know the numbers off, the dollar figures off the top of my head, but a certain amount. The anticipation was potentially an additional request for the county to guarantee paying the extra money. Not increasing the budget for the project, but asking specifically for the county to pay more money without going out and finding additional funds. If that makes sense.
I'm committed personally, as a commissioner, that with the expectation that we're gonna build a building and it's gonna cost $34.5 million. We don't have to write the check today. We have ideas on how to come up with the shortfall of $12 million. We didn't discuss that fully today, but we discussed it, you know, in other places, or at least I have had discussions with others. So, Jared, if what you're saying is we should take it off, then that's fine. I think that maybe it was a little misleading to begin with. But I don't know. Are we all clear that, you know, we have given these guys authorization to move forward with building this building, and now we have to figure out how to pay for it. We just don't know what the final number is going to be.
I think that's correct, Mr. Chair. It appears as if they've been given the go-ahead to move forward. Part of that is actually in giving MOA, which is on the agenda tonight, to go ahead and move on with the design development, and moving forward with the rest of the project. I think the budget increase request was more specific to just a further commitment from the commissioners for a specific amount, but that was not requested today.
So, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I think we've all had experience with on some level, and it's already appearing in this level before anybody's moved any dirt. Now, what happens next year if they say costs go up and it's another 7 million from there and on and on? I guess we're committed to whatever it costs. We can't stop in the middle of it once it gets started, I don't think. But there are people who've said this thing's going to cost 45 million. I don't know what it's going to cost, but I think we better figure out how this is going to happen. I keep thinking this war that's about to start, if it does, is going to really change some things. And I'm talking about the Middle East. Those things happen, and so I think we better be prepared for all of that.
So we should be clear that if the design services agreement is approved, the contractor, construction manager at risk, the owner's representative, and MOA are all going to move forward to design this project and to order materials so we don't have price increases, so that this thing can be built on time. So we may not be doing a formal budget increase, but the budget has increased. period. I mean, that's how I see it. Commissioners weigh in if you want, but I think we're committed. And what we need to do is find other sources of money if we can. And we need to try to work on some value the group, the building executive committee in consultation with its professionals need to work on value engineering and to just have them move forward. Any comment? Commissioner Friel?
Mr. Chairman, I would just add to it that I see exactly where Jared's coming from. Obviously we're building a building and we're gonna see it to the end and we're gonna get it built. But at the same time, they didn't ask for an increase or a specific amount of money to come in with. And frankly, there's probably other means of finding that. So I'd rather take this off for now. If and when they need it, they may come up with funding somewhere else. They may not have to come to us for it. But I'd rather wait till that time comes that they actually need to make a request from us for money and let them look at other sources of funding.
Knowing that they're gonna be moving forward.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If someone will make a motion to remove item A from the consent agenda, someone that's on horses. And then someone will, make a motion to remove this item from the agenda. Thank you. Good. We're on break, we're concluded our session.